Pull up any transatlantic flight on a map, and the path arcs hundreds of miles to the north, up over Canada, Greenland, the edge of the Arctic, and nowhere near the straight line you'd draw between the two cities. It looks like a detour that burns time and fuel for no reason. It's the exact opposite. That arc is the shortest path on Earth, and the straight line you imagined is the long way around. So why does the shortest route look so bent? And stranger still, why do airlines then bend it even further, flying a different shape every single day? The answer involves a planet that isn't flat, a river of wind faster than the plane itself, an invisible highway system that moves twice a day, and a quiet revolution happening overhead right now that is erasing those highways for good. Imagine holding a standard globe and stretching a piece of string tightly between London and New York. If you pull it taut, the string naturally finds the absolute shortest distance between those 2 points. It does not wrap around the equator or follow a line of constant latitude. Instead, it hugs the curve of the sphere, arching upward toward Greenland and the Arctic Circle. This physical line is not a detour. It is the straightest path possible on a three-dimensional planet. When this flat string is projected onto a two-dimensional map, the flat paper stretches the northern regions, distorting the path and making it look like a massive, curved detour. In reality, the plane is flying as straight as the physical shape of the Earth allows. Mathematically, this path is known as a great circle arc. A great circle is formed by intersecting a sphere with a flat plane that passes directly through the center of the Earth, dividing the globe into two perfect halves. Any arc along this circle represents a geodesic, the spherical equivalent of a straight line. For a route like London Heathrow to John F. Kennedy International Airport, this geodesic path covers approximately 3,460 nautical miles. If an aircraft were to fly a path that appears straight on a standard flat map, maintaining a constant compass heading, it would travel a longer, wasteful route, adding over 100 miles of unnecessary flight. The geometry of our world dictates that the straightest path on a round planet must look bent on a flat map. The primary culprit behind this visual illusion is the Mercator projection. Introduced in 1569 to aid marine navigation, this conformal map preserves angles and compass directions, meaning a constant heading, known as a rhumb line, appears as a perfectly straight line. However, flattening a three-dimensional sphere onto a flat sheet of paper requires a major geometric compromise. To maintain correct directions, the Mercator projection stretches the grid of latitude and longitude. This distortion increases sharply as you move away from the equator and toward the poles, inflating the apparent size of northern land masses and stretching distances. Because regions like Canada, Greenland, and the high North Atlantic are stretched horizontally on flat screens, the mathematically straight Great Circle route is pulled upward, appearing to bow toward the Arctic. When this same route is plotted on an orthographic projection, which mimics the three-dimensional view of a globe from deep space, the illusion vanishes completely. On this projection, the flight path between London and New York resolves into a perfectly straight line. The aircraft is not taking an inefficient detour. The map is simply misrepresenting the physical reality of the sphere. Yet, even with the geometric explanation resolved, transatlantic flight paths still do not remain static. If this Great Circle route is mathematically the shortest path on a sphere, why do real-world flights almost never trace this geometric line exactly? The primary force disrupting pure geometric perfection is the jet stream. Operating at the boundary of the troposphere and the stratosphere, usually between 30,000 and 39,000 feet, this atmospheric phenomenon behaves like a high-altitude river of wind snaking across the northern hemisphere from west to east. This river is generated by the sharp temperature contrast between cold polar air masses and warm tropical air, combined with the rotation of the Earth. The resulting atmospheric pressure gradients accelerate air parcels, which are then deflected by the Coriolis force into a narrow, fast-moving band. Core wind speeds routinely exceed 100 miles per hour and can occasionally surge past 250 miles per hour during the winter months when thermal contrasts are most severe. For a commercial airliner cruising in this altitude band, this fast-moving air mass is a decisive operational factor. It fundamentally decouples an aircraft's airspeed, the speed at which it moves through the surrounding air, from its ground speed, which is the actual speed of progress over the surface of the Earth. An aircraft flying at a constant aerodynamic power setting moves through the air mass at a fixed pace. If that air mass is itself moving at high speed in the direction of travel, the aircraft's speed relative to the ground increases by that exact amount. To exploit this effect, flight dispatchers must design routes that adapt to the wind. For eastbound flights traveling from North America to Europe, the goal is to align the aircraft's path with the core of the jet stream. By bending the flight path away from the strict Great Circle geodesic to ride these powerful tailwinds, the aircraft can experience a substantial boost to its ground speed. This tailwind assistance can shave up to an hour off the crossing time. Even though the aircraft covers a longer physical distance over the ground, it completes the crossing faster because it is carried forward by the moving atmosphere. Westbound flights face the exact opposite situation. Flying directly into a strong headwind of 100 knots dramatically increases fuel consumption and extends the flight time, making the pure geometric path highly inefficient. Westbound flights must therefore bend away from the wind, curving north toward the Arctic or south toward the Azores to find paths where the headwinds are weakest. Dispatchers might also plan the flight to climb or descend to a different altitude layer where the air currents are calmer. Because the jet stream is constantly shifting, undulating, and breaking into smaller wind pockets, its structure is never permanent. This variability requires dispatchers to recalculate the optimal route for every single oceanic crossing. Flight planning software ingests high-resolution atmospheric models to map a wind-optimal trajectory. Consequently, the same city pair can produce an entirely different route shape every day, and a completely different shape in each direction. While a westbound flight might detour hundreds of miles to bypass the headwind, the eastbound flight on the same day will dive straight into the current. The straight line saves miles, the wind saves time and fuel win. Every single day, airline flight planners and dispatchers solve a fresh optimization problem for every scheduled crossing, treating each departure as a unique operational puzzle. Rather than relying on static, one-size-fits-all lines, dispatchers evaluate multiple trajectories. Advanced flight planning software ingests real-time global weather models to calculate a precise balance between the shortest geometric distance, the day's shifting wind fields, projected fuel burn, and ETOPS diversion constraints. These calculations carry immense financial weight for the airline. Operational cost analyses show that every extra minute a wide-body commercial aircraft spends in the air incurs a cost of approximately 51 pounds, or roughly $67 when factoring in fuel consumption, crew labor, and airframe maintenance. This constant penalty means that a route stretching hundreds of miles longer over the ground can still be the most profitable choice if a powerful jet stream tailwind cuts 30 minutes from the journey. The wind shifts the mathematical optimum so dramatically that the pure geodesic path rarely wins. Ultimately, every daily route is a dynamic economic compromise. During the 1950s and early 1960s, a major geographic challenge arose over the high seas of the North Atlantic. Once an aircraft climbed past the coastal shores of Ireland or Newfoundland, it entered a vast radar-blind zone. Ground-based radar signals only travel about 200 miles from the coast, leaving thousands of miles of open ocean completely dark to controllers. In this silent expanse, pilots had to rely on high-frequency radio transmissions to verbally report their estimated positions, sometimes 20 minutes apart. As jet traffic surged after the Second World War, this lack of real-time tracking posed a severe safety risk. Standard separation was impossible when controllers were effectively flying blind. To manage this growing volume of aircraft safely, aviation authorities developed a highly structured solution. Rather than allowing aircraft to choose their own paths across the water, controllers funneled the traffic into a set of parallel virtual highways known as the North Atlantic Organized Track System. Formally established in 1965, this system reorganized the chaotic airspace into a rigid, multi-lane corridor. In 1968, the formal commissioning of the Gander Automated Air Traffic System, GAAP, linked computers in Canada and the United Kingdom, allowing controllers to coordinate these tracks across the entire ocean. These highways are not permanent. Because the wind fields are constantly shifting, the track system is redesigned twice every day, with messages typically published at 1400 UTC and 2200 UTC. The daytime track system, generated by the Shanwick Oceanic Control Center in Scotland, governs the westbound flow of aircraft departing Europe. The nighttime system, produced by the Gander Oceanic Area Control Center in Canada, coordinates the eastbound flights. This twice-daily cycle creates a massive, coordinated reversal. Westbound traffic peaks across the ocean during the day, crossing the 30 West Meridian between 1130 UTC and 1900 UTC. At night, the flow reverses entirely, with eastbound flights riding the jet stream back to Europe between 100 UTC and 800 UTC. To maintain safety in the radar-free sky, the system historically required a massive buffer of 40 nautical miles of lateral separation between aircraft on parallel tracks. Once an airline is assigned a specific track and altitude, the flight crew must maintain that exact lane. A pilot cannot simply steer slightly to the left or right to chase a better wind pocket or avoid turbulence, even if a nearby track looks far more beneficial for their individual flight. The safety of the entire ocean depends on absolute compliance with the grid. Apart from the rigid grid of the tracks, a second operational constraint forces flights to bend away from the absolute straight-line path. For decades, twin-engine aircraft were bound by strict regulatory rules known as Extended Range Twin Operations, ETOPS. Originally, these rules mandated that any twin-engine airliner must remain within 60 minutes of flying time from an airport, where it could land safely in the event of an engine failure. For a flight crossing the vast empty water of the Atlantic, this rule acted as an invisible physical tether. It biased routes away from the direct southern mid-Atlantic tracks, pushing them northward so they remained close to diversion airfields in Greenland, Iceland, and the Azores. Even when the winds or the geometry favored a more southern route, ETOPS requirements quietly nudged twin-engine airliners along a northern arc. How does a rigid framework designed in the mid-20th century adapt to a modern, congested sky? The organized track system, established in 1965, was a brilliant procedural solution to a physical limitation, a way to safely sequence aircraft across an ocean that ground-based radar could not reach. But safety came at the cost of efficiency, forcing transatlantic traffic into narrow, uncompromising corridors for decades. That constraint began to dissolve in March 2019, when the United Kingdom's NATS and NAV Canada activated Aerion's space-based ADS-B surveillance system. This technology bypassed the limits of terrestrial radar by placing receiver payloads on a constellation of low-Earth orbit satellites, creating a global surveillance net. The operational impact was immediate. Instead of relying on flight crews transmitting verbal position reports over crackling high-frequency radio roughly every 14 minutes, air traffic controllers began receiving automatic satellite-relayed position updates approximately every 8 seconds. With continuous tracking finally active over the open ocean, the massive protective buffers of the past were no longer necessary. The required separation between aircraft shrank from about 40 nautical miles to just 14, allowing controllers to safely pack more planes into the most fuel-efficient altitude bands. This newfound tracking precision triggered the systematic dismantling of the old highway system. In March 2022, aviation authorities officially abolished the organized tracks at 33,000 feet and below. Aircraft operating at these lower altitudes were completely freed from the rigid lanes, permitted instead to file random, wind-optimal routes tailored to their specific performance. This initiated the transition toward a completely track-free North Atlantic. On some days, favorable weather patterns and traffic levels now allow controllers to publish no tracks at all, leaving airlines entirely free to plot their own mathematically optimized paths across the sea. Independent operational reviews showed that this shift in ocean surveillance delivers substantial, measurable benefits. Evaluators credit the transition with tens of millions of pounds in annual fuel savings and tens of thousands of tons of avoided carbon dioxide emissions. An independent 6-year study of these satellite operations confirmed that every pound invested in the new surveillance system yields roughly double that amount in direct fuel cost avoidance for airlines. Instead of being funneled into rigid historic corridors, more flights now follow their own individually designed paths, shaped by real-time winds and specific aircraft performance. While the long-term ambition remains a completely track-free North Atlantic, the transition is gradual and calculated. During peak traffic windows and at highly congested altitudes, air traffic controllers still rely on organized tracks to sequence the dense flow of aircraft safely. Achieving a fully track-free environment depends on close ongoing coordination between airlines, national regulators, and international air traffic control authorities. Each step forward balances individual fuel savings with the systemic safety of the world's busiest oceanic sky. The next time you watch a flight map trace an arc high above the Arctic ice, you are not looking at a detour. You are witnessing a complex optimization of mathematics, atmospheric winds, and space-based surveillance. Modern aviation is no longer bound by static corridors, but guided by real-time efficiency. Subscribe for more deep dives into modern engineering.